All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to begin. Let's get this back up and going. There we go. Okay, welcome. We are up to lesson 2. For those of you who missed lesson 1, I do strongly recommend that you listen to my YouTube recording of the first class. You can find it if you go to YouTube, search Kabbalah Lesson, or search my name, Yosef Hecht, and you'll find it. And you want the one that says Kabbalah Lesson 1. Okay. We're up to lesson 2, which is in your book, page 90. I'm sorry, page 38. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing there. I was looking at the speed limit. Okay. All right, we'll give one more minute for everyone to settle here. Okay. Okay, is everyone settled? Did everyone hear me? You hear me in the back? So, lesson 2, the world of Kabbalah, revealing how its mystical secrets relate to you. And as I explained last week, this is what's unique about this Kabbalah. Of course, if we were to teach just Kabbalah on its own, it's already unique. But the fact that we also explain how it's relevant to you, to me, in our day-to-day lives, is what you'll get a takeaway from each and every class. Today's lesson 2, the dawn of limitation. So we're going to introduce a story as a introduction to this lesson. Text number 1, page 38. A wealthy businessman and his coachman arrived in a city one Friday afternoon. The rich man was settled at the best hotel in town, and the coachman went off to his humble lodgings. Both washed and dressed for Shabbos, and then set out for the synagogue for the evening prayers. On his way to shul, the businessman came across a large wagon that had swerved off the road and was stuck in the ditch. Rushing to help a fellow in need, the businessman climbed down into the ditch and began pushing and pulling at the wagon together with its hapless driver. But for all his finesse at handling the most challenging of business deals, when it came to extracting a wagon and a team of horses from a muddy ditch, our businessman was hopelessly out of his depth. After struggling for an hour in the knee-deep mud, he succeeded only in ruining his best suit of Shabbos clothes, amassing a most impressive collection of cuts and bruises, and getting the wagon even more impossibly embedded in the mud. Finally, he dragged his limping body to the synagogue, arriving at a scant minute before the start of Shabbos. Meanwhile, the coachman arrived early to the synagogue and sat down to recite a few chapters of Psalms. At the synagogue, he found a group of wandering paupers, and being blessed with the most generous nature, the coachman invited them all to share his Shabbos meal. When the synagogue sexton approached the poor and homeless to arrange meal placements for them with the town's householders, as is customary in Jewish communities, he received the same reply from them all: "Thank you, but I have already been invited for the Shabbos meal." Unfortunately, however, the coachman's budget was hardly equal to a generous heart. It would be most difficult to believe that it doesn't get guests left with a table more than a shadow of a meal in their hungry stomachs. Thus, the coachman, with his 20 years of experience in pulling wagons out of muds, took it upon himself to feed a small army, while the wealthy businessman whose Shabbos meal leftovers could easily have fed every hungry man within a 10-mile radius floundered about in a ditch. Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok Lubavitch told the story and explained its lesson. Every soul is entrusted with a mission unique to her alone, and is granted the specific aptitudes, talents, and resources necessary to excel in her ordained role. One must take care not to become one of those lost souls who wander haplessly throughout life, trying their hand at every field of endeavor except for what is truly and inherently their own. So this is going to be the key to today's lesson. That we have to know that we each have our soul's endeavors, our soul's talents, and we have to try to keep on par with what our soul is meant and designated to be. And the question is, how do you know? By the way, I do want to, before we continue, I want to say a thank you to all of our breakfast sponsors. As you see, thank God, our breakfast is growing as the class is growing. So the more we can get, the more we're able to provide. And also, as you can see, our projector and laptop are on their last legs if anybody's interested in helping us out with that. So, what happens in this story that we just read, each one of these individuals had best intentions. They each wanted to do something right. They each wanted to do a mitzvah, to help out, to do what they can. But it wasn't necessarily destined for each of them what they ended up doing. And this is where we have to learn about what our soul is destined to be and what we are meant to do. And that's what we're going to explore in today's lesson. So now you're going to ask a question, well, how do I know? There's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of things in life. How do I tell apart? Should I retire? Should I spend more time with my family? Should I go and volunteer? Should I sit in the synagogue and study? Should I become a board member? Should I invest to study more, to learn more? But maybe I should learn more Hebrew. Maybe I should pray more. These are all good things. How do I know what is the right thing to do? You know, you take a look at what's going on in Israel, and everybody's volunteering. Now imagine if you have certain people that say, I really, really want to go to the front lines, and I want to be the ones shooting the guns, but have never held a gun before. Well, those soldiers who are in the very elite units say, I'd rather be washing the dishes in the kitchen. So everybody has to know their place. So for many people, it's, well, do whatever feels right to you. What do you feel? And this is in our culture, a lot of times you feel people pushing about doing whatever you feel is good, whatever you feel is right. Well, that's not always the right approach. You know, as much as we can tell someone, you can, sometimes they can't. Okay? If someone does not have an ear for music, you could give them every type of instrument, it's not going to work. If someone, you get the point. So each soul has come on earth to serve a purpose set out by God, which means that humans need to figure out what each of our missions are given. So how do we do that is the question. How do I find my soul's unique purpose? So Jewish teachings help us identify some signposts that help us navigate the issue. It's not the only one, but there are important ones that we can learn. So, in the previous lesson, we learned a new term, and I'd like you to once again take out your little booklet here. And you see lesson 1, we went through the key terms. So we're going to be focusing on the green today. And yeah, that's most of our focus is going to be on the green. And Al, I have an extra one if you want. Actually, do I? Here. Okay, so the term we're going to begin with today is kochot hanefesh. Okay, well, this is some possible factors that could help you: family history, education, the greatest communal need at the moment. You enjoy it, you are good at it. So these are some things that are key factors in helping you see where you are in life. Now, as I said, this is what's going to be the focus, the green today, and then this aspect here. So, what is kochot hanefesh? You also see it in your book, page 40. The soul's 10 attributes that are broadly divided into 2 categories: intellect, seichel, and emotion, midot. So, what is the kochot hanefesh? We're also going to explore alongside that a feature which we had in our booklet, which we had in our map of the Seder Hishtalshalut. Remember that term from last week, Seder Hishtalshalut, which means the course of chain reaction, or the way we translate it, system of devolution. And we're going to be focusing primarily today on Atzilut. Somebody asked about Atzilut. So what is each of these? So I'm going to skip Atzilut for a minute. And let's first take a look at the kochot hanefesh. So I'm going to skip the next text there. And here's the question. Can we say that God is kind, mighty, and wise? Is God the transcendent, the one who is free of attributes, or the immanent one who bears specific praiseworthy attributes? Take a look at Proverbs, page 42. Proverbs. God with wisdom founded the earth, with understanding established the heaven. With his knowledge the depths were split. Text number 4, page 43. Unto you, God, is greatness and power and beauty and triumph and splendor, for all in heaven and on earth is yours. Unto you, God, is kingship. In the Hebrew, you have the 10 attributes as we'll learn here: Gedula, Gevura, Tiferet, as we'll learn. We're going to learn the meaning of each of these attributes specifically. Now, the problem is that, how do you say this about God? When we refer to God, we all read the Haggadah, V'hi she'amda, V'hi she'amda, V'hi she'amda, Lavoteinu v'lanu. How's it end? V'hakadosh baruch hu, matzileinu miyadam. What does that mean? V'hakadosh baruch hu. What is Hakadosh baruch hu? The Holy One, blessed be He, right? That's generally how we refer to God. We don't give him a specific name. Text number 5. Our sages purposefully, and this is from Rabbi Yehuda Lau, known as the Maharal of Prague. Our sages purposefully refer to God as Kadosh, the Holy One, blessed be He, as opposed to the Intelligent One, blessed be He. For God's true self is unknowable. All that we know about God is that He is detached from and beyond every form of physicality and any existing entity. It is therefore appropriate to refer to God as the Holy One, for the term Kadosh describes an entity that is transcendent. Indeed, God is Pshitut, the ultimate abstract simplicity. It's another word that you're learning, Pshitut. Okay, Pshitut, term key 22, page 445. What is simplicity? A state, when we say simplicity, we don't say simple as nothing, but simplicity, a state of abstractness in the sense of transcending definable qualities and specific attributes. It's like the whiteboard that could have anything on it. So the whiteboard is not nothing, it's a potential for anything. That's a simple way of explaining, that's the most simple way of explaining Pshitut. However, this is problematic. This is problematic. They say that Albert Einstein was traveling on a train. The conductor is coming and punching the tickets. And he's looking and he's an absent-minded professor, and he can't find his ticket. And the conductor recognizes him. He says, Albert, I'm sure, you're such a great man. I'm sure you paid for a ticket. Don't worry about it. And he keeps walking on. And he's about to walk out, and he sees he's still looking for it. And he says, Albert, don't worry about it. I know, I'm sure you paid for a ticket. He says, conductor, you don't understand. I have to find out where I'm going. So you could have someone that is very, very brilliant, very wise, an Albert Einstein. And that is such a great mind. And so this is where Chassidus comes in to explain this in another sense. He says, to say one thing, say, well, God is abstract and doesn't relate to anything. Okay, that is the way some Kabbalists and the way some philosophers want to explain it. The problem is that you're also very much limiting God in that sense. So Chassidus provides a parable to try and explain this. And it says you have the brilliant Albert Einstein. And he has to come into a class to explain his incredible theories, theory of relativity, let's say, to a couple fifth graders. So he could put a bunch of numbers on the board and they won't know what's flying. A bunch of plus, minus, X, Y, Z. They're not going to know what's flying. So how does he explain it? So he has to think and rethink, and he has to give some explanation, sometimes using a parable, let's say. Theory of relativity. He'll say, well, the train is moving at this speed, and then you are on the train, and this is relative to the speed of the train. This is where you are, right? So he could dumb it down for a fifth grader to understand, or for me to understand. So when he is dumbing that down, is he losing his aspect of being Albert Einstein? No. He's actually becoming greater in that sense. Because what he's actually doing is saying that not only am I able to bring it down in very vast and deep ways that only professors could explain, but I could even bring it down that even a simple fifth grader to explain. Now, I don't know if he was actually able to do that or not, but the idea is that being able to bring things down in different explanations that could be comprehended even in a more simple sense, that actually brings out the greatness, not and not the opposite. So with this parable, we understand that when we talk about God expressing himself in different formats, that actually brings out God's greatness. Because it's the ability to be able to express himself in different forms. Let's take a look at the Zohar. Many of you heard of the Zohar. One of the most fundamental books in the Kabbalah. Text number 6, page 45. The Zohar, you are one, but not in a numerical sense. You are exalted above all the exalted ones, hidden from all the hidden ones. No thought can grasp you whatsoever. You are the one who has brought forth 10 ornaments, which we can call the 10 Sefirot, to direct concealed worlds and revealed worlds. So we're learning here about two levels, two manifestations of God. The transcendent one, the Peshitot, the attributeless, the ungraspable. And over here is where we refer to God as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is holy, he's exalted, he's beyond. And then they refer to that as the Ar Ein Sof, which we're going to talk about in next class, the infinite light. But then you also have, the second paragraph tells us that at the very same time, you can have that God ornaments himself with the 10 definable and limited attributes, which explains those biblical verses that describes God's character that we read in text number 4. Greatness, power, beauty, triumph, splendor, all those things. Because God's character is coming down in a way that is relatable to the human being, to humanity. And these 10 terms, these 10 attributes, from now on will be referred to as the 10 Sefirot. Anybody who's studied Kabbalah in the past has heard that term, the 10 Sefirot. Sefirot. Okay, take a look at your key term, 2.3, 10 Sefirot, numbered entities, 10 specific, definable attributes that God manifested from his infinite self. Text number 7. Some have linked the word Sephira. What does the word Sephira mean? To the word mispar, number, which indicates a state of finitude. Others have related the word Sephira to sapir, which means a shining stone that can project all different types of colors. Some relate the word to sipor, which means a story or to reveal, to tell something. And some relate it to Safar, which means a border. Safar, which means a border. But either way, these all give the same idea, that you are limiting something in a certain defined characteristic or way in order to project a certain idea or concept or feeling in that particular attribute. And so, just as we gave the example of Einstein, that it's not that when he explains it to the 5th graders that he is now losing his Einsteinness, his Einstein self. He is rather just projecting his idea in a certain fashion, in a certain way that these children should be able to understand. So the same way God's infinite power is omnipotent, and part of being omnipotent is to carry the potential to bear specific attributes in a specific way. Text number 8. The Infinite One is perfect without any flaw. Should you assert that he is infinite power but lacks the power of finitude, you deny his perfection. And so they aren't a new thing, they were a revelation of a pre-existing concealed potential. Now, and God is now bringing this down in a term tzimtzum, which we're going to learn about a little later, in order to reveal, to manifest, and to emanate this pre-existing potential. And with this, you're going to now understand something that many philosophers have never understood. Many Kabbalists have never understood, and even those who study Hasidus maybe don't understand this properly as well. But you will learn about this, and that is as follows. How do you balance this out? Because on one hand you're saying that, okay, so what are these sefirot? Are they tools? So then they're external. They're not God himself. If they're God himself, then how are they limited? So you have this dichotomy that's something that has always challenged philosophers and Kabbalists. So you want to say they're sefirot, good. But how do you balance the fact of saying, on one hand, you want to say that they're God himself, but then you're limiting it to a certain way. But at the same time, you are saying that they are that they are God himself. So how do you explain that dichotomy? And this is where a concept that's introduced in the Hasidus aspect of Kabbalah, which is one of the key ideas of Hasidus that was introduced above the concept of Kabbalah. And that is a term that we call not the God, but godliness. Godliness. Which means that it's a manifestation of God himself being represented in this specific attribute. So it is God himself, but being attributed in this specific way, in this specific form. Text 9a.
I have a question. How can he be infinite and finitude at the same time?
That's the question that we're answering right now.
Oh.
So what is text 9a? Let's read it. The first of Sefirot, Chachma, cannot be termed a creation, God forbid, because it is literal godliness. Rather, God condenses light to the extent that he could manifest himself in Chachma and the other attributes. These intellectual attributes are his attributes, the kindness is his kindness, and so forth. By the way, God is not a male or a female, we're just simply using this term in this sense. So, let's explain it like this. You have a whiteboard. Okay, we're going to write on the whiteboard, we're going to write Sefirot. Now, you see a blackboard. It says Sefirot. What happens now? Sorry, go back. What happened there? What happened here? So what is it? Is it white or is it black? So the answer is that there is really no connection. There's really no connection between the letters and the white paper, other than the fact that the paper is the platform for the writing. Because what happened here? You took a black paper that's sitting behind the white one, and you could simply put it in front and it becomes white, or the opposite. So, is the word Sefiro, is it part of the paper or not part of the paper? Okay, I'll let you think about that, and maybe that will help us understand. Depends how it's made. You could write it on, or you could cut it within the paper itself, and then that is actually part of the paper, right? If you're cutting it within the paper itself, it's part of the paper.
But it doesn't change the word.
But it doesn't change the word, right? So one way is by writing it. So by writing it, that's actually a separate entity of the paper itself. But when you're cutting it out in the paper, then you are simply you're simply showing that within the paper itself also exists this word. Right? The paper also has this word. It doesn't mean that now it's separate of the paper. It's still part of the paper. It's just a way that the paper is expressing this word. One sec. Yes. Okay. Any questions before we move on?
If you write it, you are adding more to the paper. So you are increasing it.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with the point of our discussion. The point is how are you able to express something? How are you able to express something when its very identity, could that very identity be something else? And the answer is yes, it could. If that thing within itself is expressive of that specific thing, it could still be you. I'll give you another example. You have the sun shines down, right? The sun is shining. Now you have 3 windows. One window has a blue pane, another window has a red pane, and another window has a white pane. The sun shines through. Over here you're going to see blue, over here you're going to see red, and over here you're going to see white. Is that light a different light now? No, it's the same light. It's just one is using one color to be expressive in this way, to express the light in this way. Another is using a color to express the light in another way, and another is using a color to express the light in another way. So it's that same light is being expressed in different ways, and this is what the sefirot are. Now, unlike that example that I just gave, the problem with that example is the color is something that's separated from the actual sun. Now, if we could imagine if that color was within the sun itself, expressive in specific ways. For example, if you were to take a light and to shine it on a sphere, and you see different colors coming out, so that light is being expressed in different ways within the sphere itself. The problem is you do need different aspects to explain this, because each one has something that the other doesn't. So the example of the teacher that we gave before is that the teacher is expressing the idea within himself. Right? Within himself, he is now making it explanatory to that 5th grader. Whereas in the other way, in the example of the sun, the light, the color change is something that is outside of itself. But what we get better from the sun is more the concept of a more infinite type of expression. Let's take a look at text 9b. And this is where we introduce the concept of Atzilut. The Sefirot are called Atzilut, not Bria. The term Atzilut in the Torah means emanation, which indicates that the Sefirot are an emanation from God's infinity, not an independent creation. This provides us with a second reason for referring to the Sefirot of Atzilut, for the etymological root Eitzel, meaning together with God. So God's emanation of 10 Sefirot attributes of the divine, but the finite expression. This is Atzilut. Atzilut means the emanation of God Himself. Atzilut means emanation or togetherness or close to, and something that is Atzilut means God Himself. So therefore, when we talk about the 10 Sefirot, now if you learned Kabbalah in the past, you may have learned that Atzilut stands above it. But that's actually not 100% true. Every world has their expression of the 10 Sefirot, which is true. But in a more general sense, Atzilut, the 10 Sefirot, is God Himself being expressed in that way, as opposed to the other 3 worlds which we learned about last week, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Those are worlds that are expressive outside of God Himself. I can't say outside of God Himself, that's also not a proper term, but which God uses to relate to an outside realm. This is within Himself. So we'll have to explain this a little bit more. No one said Kabbalah is easy when you signed up. I don't think you expected it to be easy. When I learned all these concepts, I would sit with a study partner, and we would learn through the books. all 100% in Hebrew.
Is it like this, like your body is finite, but your soul is infinite?
That's a great example. We're actually going to get to that. So yes, good thinking there. We're actually going to get to that idea. The body and the soul is a great way to explain it. So let's read text 9c. The Sefirot are utterly incomparable to God's essence. For that reason, they refer to them as Elokut, godliness, as opposed to Elokah, God Himself. So this is where Chassidus comes and gives this sort of new idea, new concept, where Kabbalah had difficulty with this, and that is that Chassidus introduced this concept that the Sefirot, on one hand, you cannot say that it's God's essence itself, but at the same time, they are still godliness. So, for example, what's another way to explain this? There's a story. There's a story of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. He was holding his grandson, who later became the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek. His mother, this boy's mother, tragically died very young age. And so his grandfather raised this boy. But he still referred to him as Zaidi. Zaidi, right? Zaidi. Zaidi means grandpa. So, he starts tugging at his arm and he says, Zaidi, Zaidi. He says, no, that's not Zaidi. So he starts pulling his beard, right? Kids like to pull beards. It's my daughter likes to do that, Devara. He says, Zaidi, Zaidi. He says, no, that's not Zaidi. He says, so where's Zaidi? Then he just points to him and says, this is Zaidi. What was he telling him? He's saying, you have an arm. Is that you? Yes and no. Is your foot you? Yes and no. Is your eye you? Yes and no. It's all you, but it's not you. It's a part of you. It's an expression of you. But if you want to say, this is you, this is me, how do you express yourself? What really am I? What really am I? I could think, I could speak, I could say, I could feel, but what am I essentially? And this is the concept of Atzilut. Atzilut says that on one hand, it's not that it's separate, right? It's not like a garment. So last week we talked about garments. Speech, thought, and action, those are garments. Those are external. Those are not really me. On the other hand, it's an integral part of me, but it's also not me. So the things that I feel, my attributes, my emotions, these are all integral parts of who I am, but they don't really define who I am. What's the real me? Is that definition of who I am, as we talked about, as you mentioned before, which we're going to get to that example. Now, one example, when it comes to prayer, so this is what you were explaining before, that you have a neshama, you have a soul, which is really your defining aspect. At the same time, that soul comes to partner with the body, but we know that ultimately the things that your body does or feels is not really the defining factor of your soul. How do we know that? Because when a person dies, they have all of their attributes intact, but they're missing. They're missing the you, right? They're missing the identity of the individual. You're no more here. The person is no more here. Everything about them is sitting right here, but they're not here. So on one hand, everything about you is here, but it's also not. Now again, the problem with this explanation, again, when referring to this way of God, is that the soul and the body are two separate entities. Whereas with God, the attributes are part and parcel of He Himself. So you can't say that the soul leaves. So that's where, again, you have to kind of put these different concepts together to make it all fit. But the idea, as you mentioned, is that. So Atzilut is part of the divine identity, and no.
You said soul leaves. Does it leave?
By the human being, by the human, the soul and the body are two separate things. So in other words, the way the human expresses themselves, they are attributes of the soul. The way you're expressing yourself is attributes of the soul, but I'm saying at the end of the day, the problem with using that in reference to God is that by God the soul and the body are not two different entities, or by the human they are.
So when you die.
But for example, if the soul feels, right? So it's feeling using the heart, right? If the soul desires using the heart. If the soul wants to think, it thinks using the mind. Now the soul leaves. Does it mean that the soul no longer has those attributes? The soul still has those attributes, but they don't have a real way to express it. But those attributes still exist within it. Am I getting too deep here? No, good. Easy, good. So, all right, so then let's get to the hard stuff then. On page 50, which I'm not going to go through in detail, but just to understand, when it comes to prayer, one way of how we could look at this, when it comes to prayer, we have the breakdown of the prayer, beginning with the morning prayers, Birchat HaShachar, Psuki de Zimra. This is like the Ashrei and the Baruch Sha'amar, blessings of praise. Then you have the Shema, then you have the Amidah. In each of these, the Amidah represents Atzilut, which is why it's recited quietly, silently, in complete submissiveness when it's expressing the attribute of Atzilut. Now, let's take a look at figure 2.1. We talked about the Sefirot, but we didn't actually talk about what the Sefirot are. So what actually are these Sefirot? So, you have Chachma, there are 10 Sefirot. You have Chachma, wisdom. So the first three are intellectual. Chachma, Bina, Das. Very good. Who said Chabad? That's right, Chabad, right? Chabad. That's where if anyone wants to know what does Chabad mean, those who didn't know till now you know. Chabad stands for Chachma, Bina, Das. Wisdom, comprehension, and knowledge. And then you have, those are all intellectual, the cognitive. Then you have 7 emotions. Chesed, kindness, Gevurah, strength, Tiferet, beauty, Netzach, victory, Yesod, foundation, Malchus, kingdom. Now, we don't have time to go into detail into each of these, but we'll give a little bit of an idea of what this is. Let's take a look at text number 10. The 10 Sefirot of Atzilut, which emanate from the essence of the divine infinity, are generally depicted in Kabbalistic works in a 3-column chart. Kabbalistic works explain that the right column is associated with chesed, the left column is associated with gevura, and the middle column is the bridge between the two, comprising both chesed and gevura. So you have this in your little chart here. All right, you see this? All right. So you have chachma. You see the right, left, middle, right, left, middle. This is where our DNA chart is: the right, left, middle. The first 3 are intellect, and then the emotions are the bottom ones. So now let's break down a little bit to understand what these actually are. Text 11, the 3 traits. The attribute of chesed seeks to provide without limit, even if the recipient is in no need of pity, lacks nothing, and faces no difficulty. The attribute of gevura seeks to exercise restraint when providing to others or to refrain from giving altogether. The attribute of compassion seeks to pity whoever is in need. It is the mediating attribute between gevura and chesed. For that reason it is called tiferet, beauty, akin to the multicolored garment that provides harmonious beauty. So we have these 3. We have chesed, kindness and love. The chesed is great, giving, sharing, but it also has a downside. What's the downside? That it doesn't have any restraint. And it doesn't look at the need of the giver. Gevura, on the other hand, is strength, holding back, restraint, discipline. So you say that's not a good thing. Well, sometimes it is a good thing. It means you have to be calculated. You have to know what you're doing. Right? Imagine if there was no gevura, when making sure that they're going into Gaza, right? Imagine if they're not calculated, making sure what they do. But on the other hand, imagine if they only said we have to be good, we have to be good, we have to be kind, right? You have to have a mix of both. So it's about the beneficiary, and so this is where you have the concept, the third one, which is the middle one. Tiferet means beauty. What does it mean, beauty? It means harmonization. Combination of chesed and gevura means playing the 2 together. This is why you've heard of Hillel and Shammai, right? You probably heard the story, text 12. A non-Jewish man once approached Shammai and told him, "I would like you to convert me to Judaism on the condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on 1 foot." Shammai used the builder's measuring tool he was holding and to chase the fellow away. The prospective convert then approached Hillel with the same request. Hillel converted him, telling him, "Whatever you hate being done to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the entire Torah, the rest is its commentary. Now go and learn the rest." Now many people, when they read this, they look at it as a sort of good guy, bad guy story. Shammai is being so mean to the poor guy, and Hillel, well, he's finding a real nice way to be nice to him and kind to him. But the truth is that that's not really what's taking place. Shammai, his soul was more associated with gevura, with restraint. And being associated with restraint means doing things proper, right? It's like that. It's like that person that everything needs to be in order, everything needs to be in place. Nothing could be out of order. The person that's extremely organized has a strong attribute of gevura. The one that is always just throwing things and giving and just not very organized is usually associated more with chesed. Now, neither one on its own is good. You have to have a balance. Shammai reacted with gevura. He has higher expectations of himself and of others. He expects things to be done right. Hillel, on the other hand, is more chesed. So he says, "Okay, I'll make it work." Even though what he was saying was essentially not really, in a certain sense, he wasn't really telling him the full truth, if you will, right? Because you can't really know the whole Torah on 1 foot. But in that sense, he was expressing his aspect of chesed. So let's take a look at the key terms that we learned. 2.6, chesed, kindness, the disposition to give and to share, irrespective of the recipient's state. Gevura, strength, the disposition to restrain giving and sharing in order to provide only in proportion to what the recipient deserves. And then you have Tiferes, which is a harmonization, combination, diverse elements. That's the idea of harmonizing, bringing things together, is why Tiferes is called beauty. Because when is something beauty? Something's beautiful when it is a collage of many different colors together, right, Jackie? That is beauty. When you have just one color, it's okay, but it's not. That doesn't really represent beauty. We're going to go through these a little bit more in the lesson video, which we are now going to play. And for those who have difficulty hearing these, and for whatever reason you're not able to hear the video, I do want to point out as well, right, that if you go to myjli.com/Kabbalah, that's myjli.com/Kabbalah, you will be able to see all these videos that are being shown, as well as the PowerPoints too. Nope, wrong thing. Let's try that again. Oh, no, wrong thing. No, wrong thing. No, that was not the video, sorry. I'm sorry, light back on. That was the niggin, I didn't want to play that. Yeah, sorry. Oh, you like it? You want the lights off? Okay, they want the lights off. Okay, it's easier to see it? Okay. Sorry, I made a mistake there. Okay, shh. Now we're going to go back to the godly aspect of the discussion. So now we understand what it means that there are three modes of God's interaction with the world. You have the Gevura, Chesed, and Tiferes. And there are the other ones as well, but we're going to focus on the top three, just to help make it more understandable. So when we talk about this, it's not that we're saying that this is something that's outside of God Himself. Rather, God is simply bringing out within Himself a certain expression in a certain way. The same way when you are kind, and you do a nice kind thing, we're not even talking about doing something kind, we're talking about feeling kindness. Your feeling of kindness. That is something that is within you. It's an expression of you, an internal expression of you, but it's still not you. You know, you watch the media, and constantly they're trying to work on people's emotions, right? That's what it is, working emotions. So you have one trying to push your emotion this way, another one trying to push your emotion that way. That's why you need your intellect to make the right understanding of actually what's taking place. That's why your mind has to control your heart and not allow your heart to make decisions that make no sense. But the feeling of kindness within you is still part of me. When I'm feeling kind, that's still me feeling kind, but it's me expressing only one aspect of me. I also have an aspect of restraint. That's also part of me. And I also have the aspect of Tiferet, which is a proper balance. I have that too. So now within God Himself, He relates to the world in different ways. Sometimes we see God's blessing coming about in a way of chesed. God using His attribute of chesed, responding to our merits, and sometimes an attribute of gevura, in a way of more judgment. Is this not doing anything? Oh, I'm going. Okay. So sometimes God interacts with the world in chesed, and sometimes gevura. And you say, why would God want to have gevura? Well, Because sometimes having some judgment is good. Sometimes having some restraint is good. You want that those that deserve to be punished should be punished sometimes, and you want that those that deserve to receive kindness should receive kindness. If everybody only has good, then if everybody only has kindness, then you won't have a proper balanced world. You have to have a world that has definition, has borders, specificity. So how do you get from the indescribable, infinite existence to something? So it's like if you're taking a piece of rubber and you're sticking it into ink and you put it on paper. Well, you have to carve out within the rubber something that will actually say something on that stem. So this is the idea of God within himself expressing different attributes in different ways. Now, some physical translations of this. See some physical translation. And this is combining everything together. Let's take a look at 2.2. This is some physical expressions of these things in the world. Things that are associated with chesed, water, light, sweetness, silver, milk, donkey, joy, wool, white. Things associated with gevura, fire, darkness, bitterness, gold, meat, ox, sadness, linen, red. That's why you're not allowed to mix wool and linen, by the way. Those are one bring the reason for that mitzvah. Red and white, right? So that's why when it comes to high holidays, we always put a white covering on the Torahs. Why? Because we want it to be associated, that it should only be connected to chesed. We don't want to have any judgment on the high holidays. Water, but you need fire too. You can't just have water. So again, this is everything, the idea of balance. Think about this as the three primary colors. As the 10 sefirot in our physical world, we have three colors. But these three colors could create everything, right, Jackie? Is that correct? I'm sorry, we are on page 58. Am I going too fast? Page 58, 2.2. That's what I just read. So if you have these 10 sefirot, yes, there may be different attributes, but you'd have the main 10, the core 10, and these all are expressive in different ways. The other ones are netzach, which is victory, which is the sense of wanting to accomplish something, wanting to do something, wanting to fulfill your goal, fulfill your mission. That's netzach. Hod, splendor, which is more of appreciation of who I am, understanding understanding the abilities that I have, and then yesod is foundation, which is connecting everything together, bringing everything together, and then malchut is kingship, which is one's ability to appreciate their ultimate being for who they are. In other words, recognizing that you have that you have an ability to share and to give everything that you have. In other words, taking your attributes and expressing that to others, which is the kingship. Being a king over others. That's in short the other ones. Okay, so now let's take a look at how this can affect our day-to-day life. Any questions before we move on? Okay. Why are you laughing? Okay, so we have Atzilut, which is a term that we learned today, which means God himself. God's very identity is infinite existence. And then we have the 10 attributes, which is how God connects or associates with the world. So now, let's see how this all plays out within our day-to-day life. So you talked about the soul, the neshama. So we begin to discover that when we wake up each morning, what's the very first prayer that we say? Before that, Moda Ani, right? Text 13. My God, the soul you placed within me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me. What is these things? The soul you placed within me is pure. You created it, you formed it, and you breathed it into me. Does that sound familiar? Created and formed sounds familiar? Yes, what? Huh? But what? Something associated with our lessons that we learned.
Yeah, last lesson.
Last lesson, right? Bria Yitzira. Right? So created is Bria, formed is Yitzira, and breathed into me is Asiya. But then on top of that, what do we say? The soul you placed within me is pure. What do we say? That our very existence is a reflection of God in His world. I have me, who I am. No one can affect that, no one can change that, no one can define me. Not even my wife. No one. No one can define who I am. That is my soul that is pure, that is unaffected. Then there is the way I feel, the way I think, and then there is the way that I interact with the world. And that is created, Bria, Yitzira, formed, and Asiya, breathed into me. That's the parts of my soul that interacts with my surroundings. Yeah.
So what it comes to the differences in individuals, where do they arise? Do they arise during this, any of these steps, or after the soul?
All of these is me. All of these is me.
So when
But some things is me the way I am on my own, and some things is me the way I interact with my surroundings.
For you, and then he's going to create a soul for someone else, it's going to be different.
100%. Everyone's identity, who I am, that is my pure soul. But what each one is for each person, that is something specific, which is getting back to our point, which we're going to continue on as we explain, understanding who I am and what my purpose, what my specific purpose is in this world. And so that's what we say, that God formed, created, but then it runs deeper. The soul is pure, and now we say that that is the Atzilut, and then you have the way the soul consists of its different aspects, its different attributes, and then how we connect with others with our outside sources.
So when he created a soul for, say, Hitler, was that pure at the time he created it and placed it within that body?
Ultimately, human beings are given free choice. And some people do very bad things with that. And those people, at that point, there's some people that cannot go back to doing tshuva or repenting for what they've done. There is such a concept. But in the very creation, every human being is created in a pure sense. And unfortunately, some people through education, they could become evil, and there is evil in the world. Yes, there is evil, and some people choose to cling to that. But every person is given free choice.
So you're not born with evil.
No one is born with evil. Yeah, but a lot of it is affected by surroundings, and that's why education is so important. That's why that's why we put such an emphasis on education, because that's really what shapes a person. The way they think, the way they feel, could really be shaped by the way a person, by their surroundings, by their friends, by their teachings. Which is why I spend 4 hours a day to get my children to a Jewish school. Because for us, that's something that's very important. And I don't think I have to go into what's going on in universities today, what education is affecting. But a lot of it has to do. Now that's why at the same time you may see you may see, because of this teaching that we understand that the soul is pure. That's why you may see a Chabad rabbi, for example, going, let's say, into a prison and putting on tefillin with someone that may have done some really bad things, or trying to do a mitzvah with them because they recognize that at the end of the day you've done a lot of bad things, but that's not necessarily who you really are. Now you could have someone that's very extreme, okay, and we always look at the extreme cases, who they do so many bad things that actually changes their identity. Yeah, so you could have someone where that by doing certain things that actually changes who you are. But for most people, they make a mistake, and that really doesn't define who they are. It doesn't mean you don't have to pay for your actions. You have to pay for your actions. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this is who you are being defined. We live in a culture and a society that defines people by the mistakes they make.
So we can make a wrong or right.
Right, you have free choice. But today, people will go and dig up some comment that you made 30 years ago and try and define you as saying this is you. But for most people, these are our levushim, these are our external aspects. And so you have to look at your soul and see what you really are. And so this is the soul is pure as Atzilut. Now you're starting to understand maybe a little bit where some of the Chabad philosophy comes from. So now, the result. Where are we at? Sorry, 1 second. Wait, that's the video. I'm going to show it in a second. So ultimately, what we have is that our core is pure. Yes, we could make bad choices. Yes, we could make good choices. But ultimately, what I think, what I say, what I do, those are all our garments. What my actual soul is, what my identity is, that is something that's pure. And that could be expressed in different ways based on the way how I feel. I may be more expressive of chesed, of gevurah, as we're soon going to see. But this is empowering. It's empowering to change. Because it empowers us to recognize that I am not defined by what I have done in the past. I'm not defined by what I have said in the past. And not even how I have thought in the past. We could always change because that is not me. My real identity is something that is pure, that is beyond anything that anyone else could try and define me. And this is something that's very powerful, very empowering, I should say, to be able to recognize this idea. So when I wake up each morning and I say, Moda'ani lefanecha, or this is actually a different translation, this is a different prayer. Elakai neshama shenasata bi ta'arahi. My God, the soul you placed within me is pure. You create it, you form it, you breathe it into me. Every single morning we're saying that I have the ability to be the best person ever that I can ever be. I have to make the right choice, and I can do the right thing. And don't let what anyone else says define me. Don't let what anyone else thinks define me. Who I am is ultimately what I choose and what I decide to be, because I am in a pure state. Let's watch the video now.
Welcome to the second video in our captivating series. We will continue our journey to the mystical world. Welcome to Atzilut. To truly grasp the world of Atzilut, let us ponder a basic question about God. On the one hand, our sages refer to God as the Holy One, blessed be He, choosing the word holy to emphasize that God is infinite, transcending specific and definable qualities. On the other hand, the Torah describes God as bearing specific attributes: kind, merciful, compassionate, to name a few. So, which is it? Does God have specific praiseworthy characteristics, or is He beyond any description? Allow me to clarify this through an analogy. Imagine you're a brilliant scientist entering a classroom to convey your theory to a group of teenagers. The problem is that your idea is too abstract and complex for these young minds. So you ponder, rethink, And finally, find a relatable detail within your theory that you successfully share with the students. In this example, there are two different levels within your single mind. There's your default mind, operating when teaching your elite students, and a second layer of your mind that produces a simplified version that the teenagers can understand. Here's the crucial point. Both levels are your mind. The Kabbalists use this parable to help us understand a divine truth. Yes, God is infinite and beyond description, but this absolute infinity includes the capacity for finite expression and specific attributes. Why? Because if we were to claim that God lacks this ability, it would imply a limitation, and God is without any limitations. But this only means that God's infinity includes the potential for finite expression. But potential does not imply actual definable attributes. That's why there's a second important step here. Kabbalah reveals that God chose to actualize his capacity to be finite, giving birth to 10 definable expressions known as Sefirot, numbered entities. It's like the teacher who doesn't suffice with having the potential to reach young minds, but actually gets into the classroom and relates the deep ideas to the simple minds. That's the mystical secret behind the Sefirot. True, they are not God's essence, but on the other hand, they are God's attributes. They don't feel as though they are outside of God. That's why we refer to them as Elokut, godliness. And that's why we call this world Atzilut, which derives from the word Etzel, meaning together with God. Now, you might be wondering how this relates to us. Our souls originate in Atzilut, and our soul's powers are the mirror image of these 10 divine attributes. Each morning, as we engage in prayer, we remind ourselves of this fundamental truth. The soul you have put into me is pure. We reconnect with our absolute identity. This realization serves as a profound inspiration to infuse more spirituality into our lives. It tells us that we possess the power to pursue the path of the divine, and that this is our truest identity. This understanding also empowers us to make a tangible impact on the world around us. Our souls are deeply rooted in Atzilut, a realm of complete divine identity. Therefore, we have the ability to introduce positive change and foster greater awareness of the divine in our immediate surroundings. So let us discover our connection to this divine world and harness the power it bestows upon us. Remember, you are a vessel of divine light, capable of making a profound difference.
So this is where the concept of Sefirot come to play, recognizing that we have the godly ability to be expressive in different ways, for the reason of why our soul's created. And now comes back to the question that we discussed in the beginning. What was the question that we discussed in the beginning? Each soul has a particular rooted one. Each soul is particularly rooted in one individual sefira, meaning that while we all are made up of these 10 sefirot, but different souls have more of a connection to a specific sefira more than others. The example we gave before was between Shammai and Hillel. Shammai is more associated with Gevura, which is why they are more precise in their rulings, and sometimes may come across as being a bit more harsh in their rulings, Shammai, whereas Hillel may come across as being more lenient because because Hillel is associated more with kindness. And so now, when I want to really discover myself, what I have to try and discover is which attribute or attributes am I more connected to. In other words, we have all, but each person has different ways that they shine more in a specific aspect. Let's take a look at text 14, page 60. Page 60, text 14. It is well known that souls are rooted in the 10 Sefirot. By examining our personalities, it is possible to identify the individual Sefirah that serves as the root for each person's soul. We readily observe that intellect is dominant in some individuals, whereas emotions are dominant in others. This phenomenon indicates that some souls are rooted in the intellectual Sefirot of Atzilut, and others in the emotive Sefirot. As far as individual Sefirot are concerned, we notice that some individuals display a dominating strain of Netzach and others dominating trait of Chesed, and so on. This is the term 2.9, Shoresh HaNeshama, the soul's root, the specific Sephira of Atzilut from which a particular soul derives. Now you say, well, how do I know where I am? Well, we know some things about ourselves. You just now try and put those in the concepts, in the context of the Sefirot that we learned. So take a look at exercise 2.1, page 61. Rate yourself in the following scale. How generous are you? How kind, loving, extroverted, optimistic, forgiving, frugal, exacting, respectful, introverted, realistic, perfectionist. These are, as you see, Chesed and Gevurah. This is only focusing on two of these. But if you take a look at page 62, we go through some of the other ones. And I'm not going to do this for you, but this is an exercise that you should do yourself to help you understand yourself a bit better and to see which Sefirot is more dominant within your soul. And so you can do this on your own. Go through yourself, try and explore yourself, and see which of these words more describe who I am. And then you will see what your soul is more connected to. It's not one is better than the other. We need everything. We need everything. But when we understand what more we're connected with, then that helps us appreciate what I should be focusing my attributes in this world. Where should I be focusing my energies in this world? That's why we see the Talmud says in page 64, text 15, Rav Yosef questioned Rav Yosef, son of Rabbah, in which mitzvah was your father most careful? Do you have something you could say that your father was very careful about a specific mitzvah? You know, sometimes when I do funerals and I ask people about their loved ones, if you could describe them in one word, what would you say? Right? And you know, you could just say a word, but what is a word that could describe them? Sometimes somebody could, sometimes somebody can't. If you think about something about your father or mother, what is something that they were extra careful about? What was something that they always tried to focus on? Let's take a look at text 16. God provides each individual with a unique set of abilities. Each of us most pursue our divine mission in accordance with our specific abilities and potentials, for they indicate our personal responsibilities in life. Say, for example, that God gave you significant intellectual abilities. It is your duty to utilize those abilities to study Torah and invest all your energy into this endeavor. True, you are required to observe the other mitzvot and commit yourself to all obligations shared by all Jews. Nevertheless, since you have a unique aptitude for Torah study, you need to be extra particular and passionate about it. Or if you are graced with strong emotional sensitivity, it is your duty to utilize this sensitivity to show love and care to others. This includes sharing Judaism's rich heritage with Jews who never had the opportunity to learn about it and inspiring them with love for God and love for the Torah. Again, you are also obligated to study Torah and observe the other mitzvah, but your main passion should be reserved for the above stated activities as indicated by the very fact that you have unique abilities in this area. Perhaps you are pragmatic by nature. You know how to get things done. In that case, your duty is to achieve practical projects. If there is a need to establish an institution for Jewish education, for example, it's your calling to put your abilities into practice by actively pursuing every effort to open the institution. If there is a need to solve a particular challenge that inhibits the student's performance, the building is too frigid, the dorm requires cooling, make it your duty to solve the challenge expeditiously. Or perhaps you can effectively alleviate the plight of the poor and the homeless and the like. Certainly you must also study Torah and act with emotional sensitivity, but your overarching purpose is to get things done. You know, you ask any very successful business people, what is the point where their business started taking a turn exponentially? And most of them will say it's when they started realizing that they have to start delegating, recognizing their strengths and delegating their weaknesses to other people. That's what successful business people do. They recognize, where's my strength? Also, you have to recognize, where's my weakness? And know that in my weakness, I have to delegate that to other people.
Rabbi, in the book, the Rebbe,
Yeah.
there's a section they talked about Eli Wiesel.
Yeah.
There was a point in Eli Wiesel's life where he was getting frustrated.
Yeah.
The Rebbe, to your point, and the Rebbe said to him, you keep doing the humanitarian work, you're good.
Right.
It's a very interesting point in time in his life, because he was deciding whether he should continue doing that kind of work.
Right. And to that point, you'll probably notice this concept in many stories that are discussed in that book with many individuals, that the Rebbe always encouraged people to take what they're good at and to make that even better. And to make that your primary focus and to know that that's your thing. There was once getting me off track, there was once a Farbrengen. It was a Purim Farbrengen, Purim gathering, where a lot of Hasidim were there. And the Rebbe was talking about the story of the Megillah. And it talks about Achashverosh, right? And he was asking, why is it that the Megillah goes to such detail about this party that Achashverosh made, which is not even a good party, right? It caused much strife for the Jewish people. And he goes on goes on describing, the Megillah describes the curtains and the drapes and the goblets and everything in detail, and the wine and the food. Why does it get so detailed? And so he basically said that Achashverosh had the ability to make a party for 180 days, which is what he made. If he would have made a party for 179 days, he did not accomplish his capabilities. Then he went on to say, there was a very famous writer that was there, Chaim Potek, right? And he has books that some people could argue that maybe a religious Rebbe may not appreciate necessarily the books that he wrote, some of them. But he went on knowing that he was standing there by that Farbrengen, and he said, if somebody has the ability to write, they have to continue writing, and to not think that I've written enough or I've done enough. But if you have the ability to write, you have to keep writing. And everybody knew that was being directed to Chaim, who was sitting by that Farbrengen, who was clearly not a religious Jew in any sense or form. Anyway, so to your point, so yes, you have to know what is your capabilities, and you have to try and make that a focus and use that for the very most that you have. And so you could have different personalities. You could be more studious, associated with Bina, kindness, chesed, practicality, malchus. And each of these can be harnessed to accomplish much good and deserve to become areas of focus of our soul. And so some people may have a good balance between chesed and gevurah. So those are people that have to try and balance. Those are peacemakers trying to bring people together. So each of these things are who you are. It says that there's a famous Reb Zusha Avani Poli. He would say that when I come up to heavenly throne, so he said this, I'll put it up here. It says, I'm not going to be asked why I wasn't like the great righteous people. Why are you not like Abraham? Why are you not like Jacob? It says, I'll be asked why I wasn't Zusha. I have to be my Zusha. I have to be my God. So I have to be who I am the best possible way. And so now, this is why, and interesting enough, we're talking about the story of Abraham now in the Torah. Today's reading, we're reading the Torah about Abraham, text 17. The attribute of chesed, kindness, declared, for as long as Abraham lived, I did not have to do my work, for Abraham stood in my place and did my job. So Abraham had such a strength of kindness that he was so giving that the attribute of kindness said to God, I'm out of business. So, but on the other hand, Abraham had such a strength of kindness that also gave rise to Yishmael, right? Because that also affected that his kindness was so strong that he didn't have that balance. So that also gave rise to Yishmael. The same thing his son Yitzchak, who was Gevurah, and that gave rise to Esau. And it wasn't until Jacob came along, which was the balance between the two, and that's how Jacob was able to have the 12 tribes who were all good because he had a proper balance. But again, it doesn't mean that one is better or worse. Rather, each one represents its aspect. So, to conclude here, last week we learned about Biyah, the three worlds that bear a self-concept corresponding to the human's levushim, the garments, thought, speech, and action. Today we notched it up a bit, exploring the world of Atzilut, manifestation of God in a limited configuration, God himself, the way he is beyond and the way he is limited. And this, in the human soul, mirrors the world of featuring the 10 specific attributes as we went through. We examined 3 relevant takeaways. Number 1, to know that the soul is always pure. And no one should try and define who I am. My true identity cannot be defined by anyone. That is my soul. That's who I am. We also learned that we discover that we have missions in life, and by examining our personality and seeing things that I am more connected to, attributes that speak to me more, that we could find more the root of our soul and find our purpose in life. And this also helps us to overcome our shortfalls, knowing that we should not be defined by the things that we've done, but knowing that we could ultimately still change it and try and focus ourselves in the right way. We could work and reveal any human attribute and allow that to become a factor in our life. And even when it comes to Shammai says in text 18, Shammai would say, make your Torah study a permanent fixture of your daily schedule, say little and do much, and receive every human with a pleasant countenance. So even Shammai worked on the fact that even though he was associated stronger with Gevurah, still, at the end of the day, he said this line, receive every human with a pleasant countenance. He recognized that you have to have the side of chesed as well being dominant and not allow your dominance in a certain aspect to completely take you over, but to know that you have to work on yourself in all aspects as well.
Lesson 2. The dawn of limitation. 1. Reminding ourselves about our absolute origins provides us with durable confidence, teaches us that spiritual growth is always within reach, and inspires us to change our environment for the better. 2. It is important to identify the root of our soul by closely analyzing our personality. This will guide us in identifying the mitzvah that requires our special focus in terms of extra time, energy, and resources. The ideal goal would be for us to displace our root sephira, so to speak, by fully utilizing our God-given potential in a positive way. 3. Part of our spiritual growth involves identifying a trait that is not revealed within us by default, and working at utilizing that trait in productive and meaningful ways.
Okay, so with that, we will conclude. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Next week, same place, same time. Is next week daylight savings time, or is it the following week? November 3rd?
Saturday night into Sunday.
All right, so remember, next week is daylight savings time, so please come on time and the right time. Not regular time, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Register online, it triggers
Give me a sec. Yeah.
Rabbi, did anyone else shut my eyes at the same time? It's funny, I used to Hebrew school from the time I was like 5 to about 12, our rabbi, we actually were in Hebrew school. So, we would discuss different concepts, and we always, kind of look up what Hillel was saying Shabbat. And I never liked Hillel, so I was never win. I said, he's got to be the first, he has to be what do you call him, the prototype of the typical liberal Jew,